Hello and welcome to another episode of Reading Together from Sea Harp Press. I'm Eugene Luning, co-founder of Sea Harp, and I'm looking forward to continuing our journey through The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. This is our timeless series edition of the book, and I, as always, would encourage you to get a copy so you can follow along. Now, in our last episode, we were in the first half of the wonderful chapter 9 of this book, which is entitled Meekness and Rest. And just to bring you up to speed at this midpoint of the chapter, Tozer was right in the middle of helping us picture what it is for the meek person to come up under the yoke of Jesus, that which is light and easy. And so we're going to be jumping kind of right into the middle of that thought, the experience of being under the yoke, learning Jesus's meekness. So that's where we are. Let's get going. In the meantime, he will have attained a place of soul rest. As he walks on in meekness, he will be happy to let God defend him. The old struggle to defend himself is over. He has found the peace which meekness brings. Then also he will get deliverance from the burden of pretense. By this, I mean not hypocrisy, but the common human desire to put the best foot forward and hide from the world our real inward poverty. For sin has played many evil tricks upon us, and one has been the infusing into us a false sense of shame. There is hardly a man or woman who dares to be just what he or she is without doctoring up the impression. The fear of being found out gnaws like rodents within their hearts. The man of culture is haunted by the fear that he will someday come upon a man more cultured than himself. The learned man fears to meet a man more learned than he. The rich man sweats under the fear that his clothes or his car or his house will sometime be made to look cheap by comparison with those of another rich man. So-called society runs by a motivation not higher than this, and the poorer classes on their level are little better. Now, I want to pause here and talk just for a moment about pretense. And if you happen to have been with us during the Screwtape letters, you recognize some of that same language. This idea that the evil one plays to those senses of class, of divisions, demarcations between people and people groups. Well, that's what Tozer's at here as well. If you've ever read in the works of Bonhoeffer, you might remember, especially in the book Ethics, Bonhoeffer talks about the fact that one of the great consequences of the fall of man is our inability to even really look each other in the eye. It's this idea that we put forward a false sense of the self, that not only in the fall did we break the connection vertically with God, that way that we tried to subsume his godness into ourselves, well, not as important, but nearly as important in our conduct of daily life, we also broke relationship horizontally. The simplest way to put it is, if you and I are godlike to ourselves, well, then that's going to be fairly competitive with all the other billions of people going about being godlike themselves. So what do? Well, we doctor the impression they have of us. We try to seem, again, more cultured, more intelligent, richer, more interesting, more athletic, whatever it would be that we are putting forward as a front. I'll give you a hint. It's like when you're at a cocktail party and it's the stuff you're trying to bring up in conversation. That's the stuff we're typically trying to get in people's line of sight. Whenever we do that, what are we not doing? We are not lifting up the other person. We are not looking for ways to make ourselves less than so that Jesus can enter the scene. We are, again, in our godness, trying to be our little false God in front of all the people around us. It's exhausting. It's pure pretense. And at the end of the day, we know in our heart of hearts, it's completely foolish. Only God is God. And the minute we let ourselves not put forward that false foot, well, life becomes frankly a lot simpler. I'll keep reading. Let no one smile this off. These burdens are real, and little by little they kill the victims of this evil and unnatural way of life. And the psychology created by years of this kind of thing make true meekness seem as unreal as a dream, as aloof as a star. To all the victims of the gnawing disease, Jesus says, "Ye must become as little children. For little children do not compare. They receive direct enjoyment from what they have without relating it to something else or someone else. Only as they get older and sin begins to stir within their hearts do jealousy and envy appear. Then they are unable to enjoy what they have if someone else has something larger or better. At that early age does the galling burden come down upon their tender souls, and it never leaves them till Jesus sets them free." And I'll just pause here to say, I'm a parent of 3 children, and I can tell you there's a crossover point in time and growing up where that is so true. When children are so little, they're delighted if you give them a present. They're like more excited about the box than the present. There's no sense of ownership. There's this childlikeness around experience and just enjoyment of life that at some point begins to have that poison of comparison. So if they got a pair of shoes that they're excited about, the minute that they see that a friend has a pair of shoes that are a different color, they're like, "Oh man." And then they compare themselves. They say, "Well, my blue shoes are better than your neon green shoes." Something that I enjoy, Jenny would tell you, my wife would tell you, for years I've always enjoyed sort of the humor of pride. Like pointing out my own pride sometimes is helpful to diffuse it. So I'll boast in a way that's completely ridiculous just for the sake of taking myself less seriously. But sometimes I'll be with one of say my middle son's friends, and he'll be like, "I only scored 5 goals in that game yesterday." And I'll say to him, just by way of having a little fun with him, "That's so crazy because I scored 6 goals in my game yesterday." Just to see how they react, and hopefully not in too mocking of a way, to bring them out of that comparison spirit that's beginning to be birthed in their early teenage years. Well, I think we all do it, so I'm only just having fun with these young friends. I'll continue. Another source of burden is artificiality. I am sure that most people live in secret fear that someday they will be careless, and by chance an enemy or friend will be allowed to peep into their poor, empty souls. So they are never relaxed. Bright people are tense and alert in fear that they may be trapped into saying something common or stupid. Traveled people are afraid that they may meet some Marco Polo who is able to describe some remote place where they have never been. This unnatural condition is part of our sad heritage of sin. But in our day, it is aggravated by our whole way of life. Advertising is largely based upon this habit of pretense. Courses are offered in this or that field of human learning, frankly appealing to the victim's desire to shine at a party. Books are sold. Clothes and cosmetics are peddled by playing continually upon this desire to appear what we are not. Artificiality is one curse that will drop away the moment we kneel at Jesus' feet and surrender ourselves to his meekness. Then we will not care what people think of us, so long as God is pleased. Then what we are will be everything. What we appear will take its place far down the scale of interest for us. Apart from sin, we have nothing of which to be ashamed. Only an evil desire to shine makes us want to appear other than we are. And the point that Tozer is trying to get across, especially with this idea of artificiality, is that what we are projecting, that artificial pretense, is what we're trying to get out in front of the world rather than our true identity. But as Jenny and I often do when we lead a retreat, say, where we spend a whole day looking at the true identity God has made us, I think it's important that even now, even as I sit here with my book in hand, I speak to you and you take on your true identity. Because if you and I would actually believe what we are, then we would have no need to come out of meekness and to try and present some sort of false pretense, some sort of artificiality about what we are not. So friends, let's do it for a moment. Who are you? Who am I? Well, we are unique creatures made by a loving God. You were knit together in your mother's womb. You were known by God the moment you were born. Indeed, the hairs on your head were known to him, and he loved you. What he spoke over Adam, he speaks over your life today. Whew, that is very good. But then you and I know we were under the curse of sin, and we gave into it. We were part of the sinful nature. Whether or not you're a big believer in the fact of original sin or not, you cannot claim that you are outside of the sinful ways of man. So, seeing you cut off, broken, condemned because of sin, what did God do? Well, before you were even alive, he sent his son to lay claim to you. He showed you a whole new way of life, and then this is the glory of glories. At some point in your human life, he called you to himself. He said, "Follow me." Whether it was a whisper or a shout, you knew his voice. So what did you become? What is this primary part of your identity? You're a disciple of Jesus, the Son of God, the one who walked the earth in what we would call the four Gospels, that very historical figure who is still yet alive. He loves you. You belong to him. You are one of his chosen, picked, personal representatives to this day and this age. The way that you rose up this morning was in his constant care. You live your whole life in his imminent presence. He has promised you to manifest his presence to you in fresh, new ways as often as you would be attentive. And here's the best one of all. He has a plan for you. You belong to him, and you will always belong to him. And someday when you draw your last breath and open your eyes on the other side, it will be his loving gaze upon you. Friends, everything I just said is particularized, yes, in your personal experience, but it's true for all of us who have come to know Jesus. So do not forget who you are. And let's just shed all the other pretense, all the artificiality we try to come up and under, and let's really be who and what we are, fully, like with gusto today. Sound good? Well, here we are, last paragraph, and then as Tozer likes to do in these chapters, I will conclude with his prayer over this chapter. The heart of the world is breaking under this load of pride and pretense. There is no release from our burden apart from the meekness of Christ. Good, keen reasoning may help slightly, but so strong is this vice that if we push it down one place, it will come up somewhere else. To men and women everywhere, Jesus says, "Come unto me, and I will give you rest." The rest he offers is the rest of meekness, the blessed relief which comes when we accept ourselves for what we are and cease to pretend. It will take some courage at first, but the needed grace will come as we learn that we are sharing this new and easy yoke with the strong Son of God himself. He calls it my yoke, and he walks at one end while we walk at the other. Lord, make me childlike. Deliver me from the urge to compete with another for place or prestige or position. I would be simple and artless as a little child. Deliver me from pose and pretense. Forgive me for thinking of myself. Help me to forget myself and find my true peace in beholding thee. That thou mayest answer this prayer, I humble myself before thee. Lay upon me thy easy yoke of self-forgetfulness, that through it I may find rest. Amen. Friends, I encourage you, as you listened to my description of your identity, go deeper. Read in the New Testament. Read in great works like Tozer's, Murray's, Lewis's. and pay attention to those personal promises that have been given to you personally as a child of God. If you and I would actually come into our understanding of being a son or daughter of God, if we would look at our life as sitting at the family table, being part of the kingdom of heaven, can you understand what that does for those people around us who do not yet know him? For the way that they see us going about work, school, relationships, the way that they see us go out to dinner. If people got to see what it's like for sons and daughters of God to actually be his children, boy, would that be inviting. So let's have done with pretense, artificiality. And friends, let's come up under the yoke of the meek Jesus, finding rest in him and finding a whole new method and mode of life. Let's do it. Thank you for joining me for the second half of chapter 9 of The Pursuit of God. I can't wait to dive into chapter 10, and as always, I'm so grateful you'd be with me on this journey. I hope you have a wonderful rest of this day.